Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make this corset dress with Queen Anne neckline. Keep watching, and if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe now and let's get started. These are the materials I'll be working with. I have 3 yards of fabric, 1 yard of lining, and I have a bra cup. The size of the bra cup you are going to buy depends on your bust measurements. If your bust is 36, you can buy a bra cup of 36, or you can go 2 inches above your bust measurements. So that means you'll be getting 38. And also you'll be needing a zip for this dress. I am starting with the front pattern, and this is my basic bodice on the table. I have my shoulder line, the chest line, the bust line, the under bust line, and the waistline. I took in 1 inch dart on both sides of the dart leg, and this dart allowance is included in the waist measurement. For the bust dart, I took 2 inches there. I used the neck width of 3.5 inches, and for the shoulder slant, I came down by 1.5 inches. I've taken in my bust measurements. There is no seam allowance on this pattern. It is when I'm transferring to fabric that I will add my seam allowance. The next thing I want to do now is to convert this basic bodice pattern to a corset pattern. I'll start by marking ½ inch from the chest line. I'll mark ½ inch and I'll take it all the way down to the waistline. The next thing I'll do now is to form the first cup by placing my armhole curve at that point at the chest line, and I'll connect it to the under bust. So the point I came out by ½ inch at the chest line, I'll place my curve there and make sure it touches the under bust line, and I'll mark it. From this point, I'll come out by 1.5 inches, and that is where the second cup will start from. To form the neckline now, I'll place my curve and make sure it touches that point we came out by ½ inch, and at the same time it is touching the armhole. So from that point we marked 1.5 inches earlier, I'll go up by 1.25 and I'll connect it to the center point there with my curved ruler. The next thing I'll do is to extend the nipple to nipple measurement to the new neckline we just formed. So I'll extend my bust pan measurements upward like so. Then I'll come out by ½ inch on both sides of the new line there. I'll come out by ½ inch to tighten the neckline, and I'll connect it back to the bust point. The next thing I want to do now is to tighten the under bust. I'll go in by ½ inch on both sides at the under bust, and I'll connect it to the bust point, and also connect it with a straight line to the waistline. I am marking my yoke for the neckline now. From the shoulder tip, I'll place my curve like this, and I'll make sure it touches the other leg of the dart on the neckline, and that is the yoke. The next thing is to form the other cup now, but before I can form the other cup, I need to close the bust dart. So I'll cut out some parts now, and then I'll close the bust dart. To form the second cup now, I'll place my curve on the neckline and make sure it touches the under bust line. Then I'll come down from the side by 1.5. Then I'll make sure my curve is touching that 1.5 mark, and I'll connect it. I label the cups 1 and 2, and there is an arrow pointing to the bust point. So you can label yours too so that you don't get confused when you're transferring to fabric. I am cutting out the remaining parts now. I'll close the 2 front pieces now. because I don't want it joining at the center front. So I'm closing it now, and I'll add another piece of paper to form the basque in front of the dress. So I'll add another piece of paper now so that we can mark out the basque. For the basque effect, I'll extend the front piece by 4 inches. You can decide on the length you want yours to be. You can make it 5 depending on what you want. So now I'll tape down the front piece on this new piece of paper, and I'll mark 4 inches. That is the length I want my bags to be. From that 4 inches point, I'll connect with a straight line to the waistline. I'll go ahead and mark a neck depth of 2 inches. The neck width I used there is 3.5 inches, same neck width I used for the front pattern. So I came down by 2 inches for the neck depth, and I'll extend it to my zip allowance. The next thing I want to do now is to mark the bust measurement divided by 4. And from the shoulder slant, I'll divide what I have there by 2 and make a point. From that point, I'll go in by 0.25. Then I'll connect those 3 points together to form the armhole. The next thing is to go in with the waist measurement divided by 4, and I'll add 1 inch allowance for that. I am marking the bust band measurements divided by 2. I'll mark it on the waistline and also on the chest line, and I'll connect with a ruler. From the chest line, I'll come down by 1 inch. That is where the dart will stop. And I'll take in ½ inch on both sides of the dart leg, and I'll connect it. That is all on the back pattern. I'll cut it out now. These are my front and back pieces. You can see that the side front and the side back are matching up. I'll go ahead now and transfer the patterns to fabric. Here I have transferred my patterns to fabric, and these are the front pieces. I added ½ inch allowance around the patterns, and for the side joining I added 1.5 inches. For the cups I added ½ inch round it, and also for the yoke I added ½ inch to the top and bottom. I'll separate the paper from the patterns now so that you can see what it is looking like. I have also cut out the lining for the main front piece. The fabric I cut out for the cup part will serve as a lining because I'll be draping on the main cup. I showed you a ready-made bra cup at the beginning of the video, so I'll be draping on that ready-made bra cup, and this one I cut out from my patterns here will serve as the lining. This is my back pattern. I'll mark out the dart on the main fabric, and I'll also measure the length of the dart and keep it in mind. I have also cut out lining for this my back piece. I'm notching my darts here so that when I go over to the sewing machine, I'll go ahead and stitch it. I'm separating the paper from the fabric now, and I'll place the lining on it. After stitching the darts, I'll go ahead and use the lining to turn the neckline and the zip area. I have cut out my bone casing here, and the width I cut out is 1.5 inches. I went ahead to fold 1/4 inch on both sides, and that is what I'll be using for the bone casing. I added interfacing to the fabric before folding on both sides, and I also added interfacing to my main front piece here. So I'll go ahead now and place each casing on the fabric the way I'll stitch it down. I'll place one at the center front, and I'll place 2 on each sides of the cup. The next thing I want to do now is to go ahead and stitch these cups that will serve as the lining. I'll place them on each other the way I'll be stitching it, and once I'm done, I'll go back to the sewing machine and do that, and I'll bring it back and show you. This is the ready-made bra cup I'll be using, and I want to drape the fabric on the cups now. The length of the fabric you need to cut out should be like ×3 of the length of your cups so that you can be able to make enough pleats on the cups. I'll mark the midpoint of my cup, and I'll also mark the midpoint of my fabric, and I'll match the midpoint on both the cup and the fabric together, and that is where I'll start my pleats from. I'll pin the fabric to the cup now, and I'll start making pleats. I'll start from the bottom part first before moving to the upper part. Go ahead and do yours too. Please make sure that your pleats are even on both cups. I am done making the pleats on the first cup now, and this is what it is looking like. I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the second one, and when I'm done, I'll go back to the sewing machine and stitch it down. I'll cut out the excess fabric and I'll bring it back and show you. I am done with the cups now, and this is what we have. You can see I've already cut out the excess fabric at the ends of the cups, and the next thing for me to do now is to fix it into the bodies. I'll go ahead and do that now. Also for the lining, I'll go ahead and fix the lining of the cup to the lining piece also. I'll do the same thing I'll do to the main fabric. I'll do the same thing on the lining, and I'll bring it back. I am done stitching the cups in place now, and the next thing I want to do is to fix the yoke. I cut out 4 pieces for the yoke. I will use the same fabric as the lining, and I went ahead to close the part that will be on the neckline. So this is what we have now. I'll go ahead now and fix it to the main fabric, and once I'm done stitching there, I'll use the lining to turn the neckline. Make sure you align the yoke properly on the fabric. Remember that the yoke will start from the joining of the cup and the side front, so place it there and pin it down. I added 1/2 inch seam allowance to the yoke, so I'll use that same 1/2 inch to stitch it down. Then I'll place my lining on the fabric, and I'll go ahead and use it to turn the neckline, and I'll bring it back and show you. This is the back piece. I've gone ahead to stitch the darts on both the lining and the fabric, and I also use the lining to turn the neckline and the zip area. I have fixed my yoke to the front piece, and this is what it is looking like. I went ahead to stitch the top stitch on the lining of the front so that everything stays in place and the lining is not showing at the front part. The next thing I'll do now is to join both the front and the back together at the shoulder. So I'll go ahead and pin it lining to lining, fabric to fabric, and I'll stitch with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. This is it after I was done joining the shoulder. The next thing I'll do now is to join the sides together. I added 1.5 inches allowance to the pattern, so now I'll go ahead and use that 1.5 inches allowance to join the sides together. To cut out the boning, measure your boning on the casing and make sure that it doesn't get to the joining allowance at the bottom. I'll do the same thing for all the bone casing. I'm using a Reggiline boning for this tutorial, but you can use any type of boning that you have. Before I insert my boning into the bone casing, I'll put my masking tape on both ends of the boning. This is what I'm doing here, and once I'm done, I'll go ahead and insert all my bonings to the bone casing. I'm done fixing the boning now, and this is what we have. The next thing I want to do is to attach the down part of the dress to the upper part. For the down part, deduct your half length from the full length of your dress to get the length of the down part of the dress. And the width I used for the down part of mine is 3 yards. I used the whole width of the 3 yards fabric, and the length I cut out is my half length minus my full length. And I've gone ahead to run a double stitch at the top of the fabric. This is what I'll be using for my gathers. So I'll pick 2 of the threads now at the top, and I'll start dragging it till I form the gathers. This is it after I was done with the gathers. Just make sure that you have enough that will fit into your waist measurement by the time you are joining it to the upper part. While joining, be mindful of the V shape at the center front. You can start joining from that V point till you get to the other side, and you repeat the same process. I'll go ahead now and join into the upper part. When I'm done joining, I'll fix my zip, and I'll also hem the down part of the dress, and I'll bring it back and show you. This is it after I was done joining. I went ahead to fix the zip. I ironed the hem where I folded, and I also ironed the zip area. So go ahead and iron your dress properly. And I'm showing you the inside now where I joined at the waistline. I went ahead to overlock it too. So go ahead and overlock yours, and if you want to attach lining, you can also attach lining, but I won't be attaching lining to the down part. The next thing I'll do now is to cut out the sleeve. I have my basic sleeve pattern here, and I'll be doing some alteration to this basic sleeve pattern to get the puff sleeve that I want for the dress. I'll place another piece of paper underneath the basic sleeve, and I'll use the masking tape to hold it down. The next thing I'll do now is to trace out the top of the sleeve on this new pattern paper. I'll trace it out with my marker. And after tracing, I'll go up by 6 inches. I'll extend the cap of the sleeve by 6 inches, and I'll connect it back into the sleeve. You can also extend by 3 inches or 4 inches depending on your preference. The next thing I'll do now is to add my seam allowance of 1 inch by the side, and I'll connect it with a ruler. I'll cut it out after connecting, and it is this new sleeve that we just drafted that I'll be transferring to fabric. The first thing I'm doing here is to cut out 1 inch away from the center of the sleeve. I won't get to the side. I'm just trimming out 1 inch from the center. Then the next thing I'll do now is to cut out on my fabric. My fabric is folded into 2, so I'll be cutting out 2 of these. And I'll also cut out my lining, and I'll show you. I have cut out my lining, and I added interfacing to the lining. You can go ahead and also add interfacing to your lining. And the next thing I'll do now is to go ahead and turn the hem of the sleeve with the lining. I've turned the hem of the sleeve with the lining here, and this is what we have. I went ahead to stop stitch on the lining. I'll go ahead and run a gather stitch at the top of the sleeve, and I'll bring you back. This is after running a gather stitch, and I went ahead to make gathers at the center of the sleeve. So just gather in a way that by the time you want to attach the sleeve to the dress, the armhole on the sleeve matches that of the dress. This is what I'm saying here. So you have to make sure that everything matches up by the time you want to fix it. I've joined the other sleeve, and this is what it is looking like. I went ahead to overlock the inside. So I'll go ahead now and do the same thing to this other sleeve. This is it after I was done attaching the sleeves. I went ahead to iron it properly. You have to iron the gathers area so that it stays nice and flat, and also you have to iron the hem of the dress. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, and turn on your notification bell so that you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.